Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Zoom Test Kitchen. I'm Jeff Widgren, and we meet here every Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern. Today, we're going to take a look at the big list of release notes from Zoom on their latest release. Look at those features that interest us and you the most. Put a few of them to the test and see what kind of new advantages that we have as well. So it's a pretty good list at that between Zoom Client and Zoom Webinar. But anyways, welcome. Let me pull my spotlight and get to seeing everybody here. Feel free to turn on your cameras if you'd like, if you can. And we'll get started. So just kind of going down the list. We've got Ray. Hello, Ray. Ray, you've been here forever. You're such a great help. Good friend.
Glad to be here. Even got the shirt.
I know. Or
If I had to make it myself.
ZTK, I know. I'm sorry. And Mike, how are you? Good to see you.
Doing good.
All right. Mike out of Canada. And we've got Tom Brown. We've got Tammy Willis. We've got John Idelson and David, Robert, Ben Hasmuck. Tamara's in the house. I haven't seen Tamara forever. Welcome. Joe Phillips just came on camera. Good to have you, Joe. Rich Douglas is here. Still says connecting to audio. Justin James. Hello, Justin and Nancy. So I've got a pretty good group together. Glad to be here. Any fresh things on folks' minds before we kind of jump in on this release notes document? Oh, it's so quiet. All right. Well, let's do it. Let's share my screen here and start kind of chugging through some of these. It was on June 19th when they released this. You can always just Google Zoom release notes and it'll take you. I think the first hit these days is release notes by date. They look out in the future a little bit. So I've got the 21st, a little something for the Zoom scheduler. And on the 22nd, resolves an issue. They're pushing a resolve where a Zoom desktop client not displaying the correct language. So if from the last update you happen to be experiencing that fix is coming very shortly, 23rd. So I guess that was yesterday. So very good. All right. So on the 19th is the big list though. And list the products first: Zoom Client, Intune, Web, Outlook add-in, and then Zoom for Salesforce as well. So the ones we pay attention to the most are Meeting in particular, and then Webinar, and sometimes we spend some time on events if we have folks in the house that are using the events platform as well. All right, so in the Meeting Webinar features, they both have this new feature called pinch scroll to zoom in on shared content. So it affects Windows, Mac, and Linux, and users viewing shared content.
Can you zoom in a little for us?
Yeah, we can do that. Tell me when. There's one notch. There's another notch. That work?
That's better, thanks.
All right. So users viewing shared content can more easily adjust their current view by using the command plus a track wheel and or alt track wheel on Windows with a mouse, or pinch to zoom on a trackpad, which commonly applies to like a Mac trackpad, but any trackpad at that. So that's good stuff. That has been available on mobile. I did see a post out there from my friend Betsy, who said she wasn't having success with this, but going to see if she shows up for maybe a little more description or if she has found resolve on that as well. Meeting features. It says we can share multiple desktop screens. And what that means, I'm going to change my share to screen 2. That's my gallery view. That's what I'm looking at right now. But that's where my share window is going to come up. So historically, you have your screens. When you hit the share button, you have your screens to choose from. So anything you put on those screens will be shared, and or you have your open applications. And so I just selected 4 open applications from vMix, the release notes, and so forth. And I held the control key down to multi-select those applications. And so it now knows, hey, Jeff wants to share all 4 of these applications, and whatever is in the foreground that has focus is the one that the audience will see. And it makes it really simple because let's say with these 4 apps, as far as getting prepared for the meeting, knowing that I'm going to be sharing content, I would put all 4 of these apps on one monitor. I would full screen each one of these applications. Then when it came time to share, I would control click or command click all 4 of these apps and click share, knowing that on that monitor where the 4 apps are, the one that I want to be seen first is up top. It's the one on top with focus. What really makes it super convenient is I can then take advantage of the features of Windows or a Mac and just simply Alt-Tab between those applications. And they're already prepared to be shared. But when I Alt-Tab and bring it to the foreground and switch to that app or the next app and the next app, it instantly changes it. And so if I did that with, let's say, the release notes and vMix, I'll go ahead and share. There's my release notes. Now I'm going to simply Alt-Tab on my desktop to vMix, and it will instantly switch to the vMix share. And so that's been there. That's not new, by the way. I don't know that a lot of people use it, but I think it's a huge advantage as far as, we've all had the experiences where the presenter is getting ready to share, and there's this, this stutter and this clumsiness about it because they're not maybe super familiar or they're not well prepared, whatever the case may be. But being prepared, and if you have multiple applications that you're going to share, just sharing them all at the same time doesn't mean it's visible, understanding how it works. But so let me go back to screen 2 and go back to the share, specifically to this feature. What we didn't used to be able to do, that I just showed you can do with the apps, is multi-select them for sharing. We could not do that previously with screens, and now we can. And so now when you have multiple monitors, I'll share screen 1 and screen 2. And you actually get to see both of them as a single share. And that was never possible before in the sense of being able to share both desktops. So it now it gives you the freedom, if you want to, move vMix over to the second screen, and it still shares both screens, but it updates the second screen, which was the Zoom window, and shows what was behind vMix on the first screen, which are the release notes that we're going through as well. Pretty handy, pretty handy. So even further flexibility. Any thoughts on that? Any applications that you can see in practice that could really take advantage of that? Yeah, go ahead, James.
I'm just going to say, in combination with the pinch to zoom, when you're sharing the two screens, it allows the person to maybe bring the screen they want to look at, zoom it up and see that, and then they can zoom it down, move it over to your other screen. So if they're in sync with what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Has while we've been chatting just this far along, has anybody tested the pinch to zoom on their desktop?
Yeah, I was doing it when you went to the two screens. That's why I'm saying
yeah,
it worked nice.
So either the trackpad, pinch and expand, or the alt. What did they say? Alt, or what was the other one?
Usually it's command on Mac.
So command track wheel or alt track wheel between the two operating systems. Did everybody have success who tried that? So let's go through the operating system itself. So somebody on Windows who could alt track wheel for a Zoom during share. So let me share the release notes again. So we have a share that's present and live. And then if somebody on Windows and Mac could do an alt or a command track wheel, and we've already confirmed that the trackpad. James, are you doing that on a trackpad with a Mac when you did the pinch to zoom?
No, I'm using the scroll wheel because it.
Okay.
I'm failing with a magic mouse. I do get a little dialog box that comes up in the upper right-hand corner that allows me to select a specific Zoom.
Okay. Anybody else?
On my Mac, the control button, surprisingly, with a roller on my mouse, the little scroll thing on the mouse.
You said Lois, you're having success with that?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's not command, it's control, which is unusual for a Mac.
Is it possible your keyboard is mapped differently? Because it doesn't work for me. I tried that when you said it.
Well, I've got a mouse that's just a mouse with a little button in the middle of it. It's not a.
No, but when you can go under preferences and you can change it to. I've changed my command and control because it's just more comfortable for me. So, but I'm not getting the Zoom on anything.
I haven't.
And I have update. Oh, you know what? I'm in Zoom Cuts. That's why it's not working for me.
Yeah, I tested it on Zoom Cuts next to me, and and ZoomOSC. The SDK client is not producing that, which is no surprise. This is a brand new release, and the SDK that those products, OSC, ISO, and Zoom Cuts is based on is previous to this latest release. So it'll come there, but this test you'd want to do on the native client for sure. Okay. All right. Well, I'll keep this share up there as we move on from the share multiple desktop screens.
Question?
Yeah.
So you said something about deciding whether to put something on screen 1 or screen 2. Is that in Zoom that you're making that decision, or would I have to have some extra bit in order to be able to choose Zoom 1 and Zoom 2? Screen 1 and screen 2.
I'm not sure that I quite caught the question in its whole. You,
Well, let me clarify. I have a situation where I have a laptop computer and I have a monitor. And
Mhm.
at that point on Zoom, I can only either mirror, so it's the exact same thing, including all of the little chat boxes and things like that. Or on the second one, I can have a gallery view, but not a speaker view. So, so I was wondering if what you're talking about, where you have that screen 1 and screen 2, is something that I'm missing. Is that part of Zoom? That screen 1, screen 2?
yeah. So your external monitor is connected to your Mac, right? So, and your
Yes.
Mac is a laptop that has its own
At
screen.
that situation, yes. And
Yeah, so
and I'm using the Mac to get onto the Zoom, and then in Zoom I'm saying I have dual monitors, so
Mhm.
two things show up.
Yeah. Yeah. So first is the operating system level, the Mac itself, recognizing that it has it has its built-in laptop. It's a laptop with a built-in monitor. And then you connect an external monitor, and you you certainly can select your preference in the Mac itself and Mac settings of whether you want that external monitor to be extended as its own separate standalone device and or mirrored to where your laptop, is identical to your external monitor.
And I'm
Um,
extending, which is the thing I
okay, so
should
you're
do to make them
extending.
separate. Yeah.
So you have additional desktop real estate.
Mhm.
So then you fire up Zoom and you tell Zoom to use dual monitor mode, right? And so it gives you that second Zoom window. And that second Zoom window will host the active speaker, the spotlight, and or the share. But there's really not any management. There's no designated management that you can say, hey, second Zoom window, I want you to display this, whether it's the speaker or the gallery and so forth. It has a mind and behavior of its own. And so if you were to put that second Zoom window on your second external monitor, it will be one of those
And
three outputs.
did you just say you cannot choose between gallery and speaker on
Not
that?
on the second Zoom window.
It's never gallery.
It's it's never gallery.
Okay, thank you.
Your main Zoom window can be anything. I believe, tell me guys, if it's in dual monitor mode, the main window you can switch from speaker view to a pen to the spotlight and gallery. But I believe, tell me if I'm wrong here. I'm trying
Yes, I'm
to
able to
feel
do that.
more confident of where the share ends up. Is it in the main Zoom window in dual monitor mode or the second Zoom window?
No, it's always in the secondary window is either the spotlight, the active speaker, or the screen share.
Or the share, yeah. So and in the main window, you can still tell it, hey, be speaker or a pen or gallery, but you can't at that point with dual monitor mode active. You can't tell it to say, hey, put the share there too. That's going to be on that second Zoom window. Yeah. Okay. All right. So then this next bullet release point says suspend participant activities enhancement for breakout rooms is kind of the header on this. And in the past, we have actually, we've actually executed, if you will, the suspend participant activities. And I'm going to share my Zoom window and just confirm with you that is in the security badge, and it's right at the bottom. It's in red, and it says suspend participant activities. And with that I describe, hey, if your meeting goes to heck and it's more than you can just click and fix, which, whether somebody's video is on and so forth, they you just need a panic button, and that's really what the suspend participant activities is meant to be, is that panic button. Think about everything that it could turn off with the exception of ending the meeting. And that is, lock the meeting, which is, not just close the doors and put, have everybody hit a waiting room. They can't even get to the waiting room. It's locked. The videos get turned off. The profile pictures get turned off. All the sharing, all these things here, share screen gets turned off, chat gets turned off, renaming gets turned off, unmuting gets disabled, starting the video gets disabled, and so forth. Just everything you can imagine. Now, for a long time, the documentation has said it does all that, and it brings everybody back from and closes the breakout rooms, and it never has. This new description says now it does. And so, because your problem might be, if you have a large event with multiple breakout rooms that are, active and going and so forth, your problem might not be in the main room, but you're the host, and you may be getting a call on, if you've got comms in that event, chat, whatever, you may be getting a call from a, co-admin who is in the breakout room or one of the breakout rooms. And, but you're the only one with the panic button. And so you're in the main room. And so now you can actually suspend participant activities, kind of gather everybody back with really essentially everything disabled. And if you can identify the problem, person, login, whatever the case may be, and fix it, that's the first thing you do, is fix it as far as removal from the meeting. And have to keep in mind on that as well. You can remove an individual from a meeting, but the behavior of them coming back is all based on a setting you either did or did not set in the Zoom web portal prior to starting the meeting. And that is that one that says allow removed participants to rejoin the meeting. And if you allow them to rejoin, they'll rejoin, and they may continue to cause you problems. If you if you say don't allow, that makes people nervous because you say, well, what if I accidentally boot them? Well, then own it. I say own it, because the advantage of having that feature actually be useful versus being able to own, the mistake and say, hey, sorry, we accidentally removed you, or somebody did, right? Because any co-host or host can do it, which is my whole, kind of guide that says don't have too many co-hosts, and don't give co-host to people you don't know their skill sets, I mean, because you're really kind of handing over the keys to the kingdom for the most part. And things can happen, and sometimes they'll just say will happen. Spotlights will disappear, or they'll show up, or something will occur in the meeting, and you're going, what the heck? I didn't do that. Well, one of your co-hosts did, and there's no way to track it down either. And so kind of have to be careful who you give that to. But needless to say, suspend participant activities is now finally fully functional. And then you have to rebuild it. If you can fix it while everything's down, and then just start rebuilding. And keep in mind, as the host, your video will be off and your mic will be muted as well. And so you have to get your mic back on, your video back on, start giving some audible instructions and so forth. And, let people know, okay, we've got the problem maker, gone, and feel free, go ahead and turn your cameras back on. You can, if it is appropriate, turn your mics back on, and so forth, and we'll get the breakout rooms reopened, and away you go. But it's kind of having to rebuild it as quickly as you can as well without actually ending the meeting. It's easier to rebuild and less embarrassing to rebuild than to boot everybody out from ending a meeting. I saw a post a day or two ago. Somebody was saying, hey, this was on the Zoom community boards, and somebody was, kind of frustrated that they were getting Zoom bombed, and one of their frustration point was the raising of the hand, and if you enable profile pictures, at least they can get an inappropriate image or message through that graphic. If you enable video to be turned on, then they can, run an inappropriate video or whatnot that way. But if they really want to make sure they're seen by everybody, at least on the first page, and what I mean by that is a gallery, if people are looking at the gallery, then you're depending on the client and the computer that it's installed on, it'll display either 25 individuals or even up to 49 individuals on a single page. And so if they want to position themselves to be seen by everybody, at least on the first page of the gallery, they'll raise their hand. Why? Because the natural behavior is right up top you go, right? And so they raise their hand and then share their content. I say to that, then quit showing the gallery. It's like, turn on focus mode, use spotlighting, and everybody's video is gone from everybody except those that the host have spotlighted. And it is really just that simple. So there's so many, individual features and so many combination of features that add up to what I call best practices, during a meeting and so forth, that, kind of coming unglued about being Zoom bombed is pretty unusual, and commonly when somebody's screaming about getting Zoom bombed, it's just naivety to the product and the feature set and practice and so forth. And, also it's public. Talking about public and Zoom links. So 2 weeks ago, our church they do it twice a year. I'll just call it Broadcast Weekend. It's a conference where I start setting up at loading in at 5 o'clock Friday evening, get out of there at 12 to 2 o'clock in the morning, get back there by 9 to 10 in the morning, and we broadcast 2-hour blocks. We broadcast at 3 o'clock, at 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and then on Sunday, 10 a.m. to 12. And so it's a big, long weekend. We do it all. We used to stream it to our own platform, but they killed that after many years. And so now we do it to Zoom, and they bought an enterprise license for that. So we pump it out to Zoom webinar. So, leadership wants to have the links that they can, tell the congregations and members about, where the Zoom meeting is and how they can tune in and so forth. But with that, they, when they put it out there, then and there's like 4,400 members that are in our area. And, one or two of them are the ones who manage the Facebook page for the church as well. And so they take those links and they put them out on the Facebook page. So I got an email from a new organization. I'll look it up and I'll share it with you in the chat before we end this meeting today. But there's this bot that this company has built that goes out and looks for all publicly exposed Zoom meetings and webinars. They grab that link. They got my email from it. Like they emailed, and I don't know how they did that. I haven't dug in deep enough, but they got my email. The system sent me an email that says, go click on this link and claim your channel. And it was, basically a webinar channel, public webinar channel, based on us releasing that link. So first I thought it was a bit of a hack or something, but then I realized how it kind of publicly found its way out. Brand new company, brand new service. And so what they do, they grab it, it builds this, kind of unclaimed channel until somebody who isn't even verified to be an authority, I or anybody could have gone there and said, yeah, let's do it, let's claim it, right? And then it becomes more official. But needless to say, I just say be careful about that, because going public on it, that word is spreading via bots really, really quickly these days, more faster every day, I should say. All right, let's see. Killed that share. Let's get back to that. And it says refined sending and receiving meeting invites and calls. So Android, iOS is where this lands. It says when sending or receiving a call to join a meeting, users will now be able to minimize the notification, allowing them to return to the previous screen without having to immediately dismiss or cancel the call in order to briefly return to a task, which I'm sure I didn't deal with it so much, but I'm sure that those who did, it's pretty annoying. Webinars. How many of you use, David's on the phone, I'd ask him, but I know he's not a webinar guy. But how many of you actually use webinar as well? So this will can make your day to a degree here. So transfer webinars between devices. So Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, iOS seamlessly transition Zoom webinars from mobile to desktop and back to mobile, allowing users to take advantage of the mobility of the mobile client and the more feature-rich desktop client to suit their needs. So that's kind of cool. Passing off. Haven't tested that on two devices, but it'll be kind of cool to see it work. Giving you, they talk about the richness and so forth, but I like the mobility part. It's like, hey, I started watching the webinar at my desk and I need to leave 15 minutes early, and now I can walk away with the webinar at least still playing on my phone while I get to my car and start hitting the road. Webinar breakout rooms. How's that? I think that was an announcement 3 years ago. So at Zoomtopia. So it's been a long time coming. David shakes his head because it requires Zoom events.
So I'm so upset by that.
I mean, there's a
don't
pattern.
Get me wrong. I get it. I'm just so
there's certainly a pattern that, when there's a very compelling new feature, if you will, that, Zoom first attempts to target it towards creating more licensed users of the Zoom event platform, and then eventually either includes it and or most commonly lately, I believe, makes it an add-on product that you can pay for in addition. So, from a business sense, I get it, but it's a little frustrating because, the people who are asking for webinar breakout rooms 3 years ago, there was no events platform, and so they have to upgrade, consider upgrading licenses and so forth. So anyways, webinar hosts can create smaller breakout sessions during their webinar, similar to those. I'd really like to dig down as many steps as exist into that word similar. similar to those available in Zoom meetings. Does that mean they're similar and there's something actually a little different, or is it just saying, yeah, same experience you have? It doesn't say the same, but it says similar. So I don't know what the differences are. The host can specify how many rooms they want to create, then manually assign attendees to each room, or have attendees automatically assigned to rooms, which is the same behavior as we know. Excuse me. These breakout rooms are independent in terms of audio and video from the main webinar session, but hosts can move freely in and out in between breakout rooms. That's the same. Webinars can have up to a webinar can have up to 1,000 attendees split across 100 breakout rooms. This requires, at this point in time, a Zoom Events or Zoom Sessions license. Although it does note this feature will not be immediately available, as it's dependent on some backend server updates scheduled for June the 26th. So we're just 3 days out from that noted date, but they went ahead and announced the feature is on its way.
So,
And-
Jeff, if I can
yeah.
just say a word, that seems like another reason to get Zoom events so that we can get the webinar studio plus the breakout rooms.
Yeah, I mean, eventually there will be, a compelling number of valuable features, which is very individualized. What's compelling to me may not be compelling to the next person, but it will become compelling enough to actually get an events license, right? And learn that platform and so forth. I think the biggest hesitation from a lot of folks, and it's not to say that there's not a good large adoption to the events platform, but the simplicity of being able to schedule a webinar or schedule a meeting, share a link, and hit start as the host, set some security settings in the readiness stage, and people show up, versus having to go through the many steps, if not very long number of steps, depending on the size of your event on the Zoom Events platform, to ready the environment. I think that's daunting and more than what some folks are willing to kind of jump into and buy off on for the simpler approaches. But anyways, team chat. I mean, point well made. I mean, if you've got a Zoom Events license, if you already have one, and let's say you were triggered to do it because of Production Studio that's on its way, then now you'll have Production Studio and Webinar Breakout Rooms, right, under the same license. And so there is no change for those who already carry the license, which is, can be a big win, because that's where, many of the newest features, that like brand new features, end up under that license. Team chat features, moving a phone icon to header in one of the chats, enhanced mobile team chat architecture. I had somebody ask about not the team chat, but had somebody asking about the toolbar, the Zoom toolbar itself. Like right now, because I'm sharing, it's a floating toolbar, and it was a teacher, just saw this yesterday, and they, I can't remember what was, but the toolbar was stomping on top of something on their screen that they were teaching, and they wanted to know if there was a way to make it a side toolbar versus a top or a bottom, so vertical versus horizontal. And as I know it, I don't think that's possible, but needless to say, you can think, if you're not, when you're not sharing, Oh, actually, even when you're sharing. So right now my toolbar is across the top. Let's see if this works. I'm going to share my Zoom window. And you can see that my toolbar is, because I'm sharing, is a floating toolbar, right? So I can just click and drag it and place it wherever. But if I hit an edge, it doesn't, it doesn't, like a lot of applications will kind of snap to a left or a right side, turn it into a vertical bar and so forth. It doesn't do that. But if I put it up top and I tap the Alt key on my keyboard, it hides and tucks it away. And if I tap the Alt key again, it comes back. I haven't done that in the middle of the screen. If I do it in the middle of the screen, yeah, I mean, that part still stays there in the middle of the screen, but it hides it and shows it. So, which was my response to this gentleman's post was, the Alt key is probably going to be your best friend to be able to show or hide the taskbar, although the vertical option is not a supported feature at the time. Anybody else have any other kind of tips on managing a toolbar during sharing that kind of gets in the way? No practices?
I never screen share, so I don't have the
I
problem.
know. I know. Yeah, but those, they're great answers, but that's not where a lot of people are, using
Oh, absolutely.
using different solutions. So kind of, in the constraints of Zoom and Zoom only, kind of, I mean, there's the most common people who know more about Zoom than I do, and I'm not claiming to know it all, are those who have had to live within the constraints of Zoom. And because I'm a vMix user and David's an Ecamm user, and Ray, he uses an ATEM switcher and OBS as well, and so we have some contributing technologies to spice things up a little bit. All right, screen sharing and team chat, and then there's some pretty good list of enhancements if you are a user of the mail and calendar in the Zoom client. Import emails to Zoom Mail, share inboxes, mention users. So this is these are, a lot of these we can go, really, but, and the really comes from most email clients, already, do this and support it and so forth. And all it does is say, hey, this is the email and calendar features are new to Zoom, and they'll continue to add features that are in more mature clients along the way. So it will become more attractive to possibly adopt as well.
If you're going to share, how about showing us the text?
I am sharing. What are you talking about?
I'm seeing your face.
Oh, I'm still sharing my Zoom window. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't go back to the document. Just for you, Lois. I've missed you and your abruptness. All right, here we go. All right, so there's a pretty good list of resolved issues. I always love those descriptions of minor bug fixes. Well, that's a super helpful description, but they're so minor they don't feel like they have to go into details. But security enhancements, that one I'd love to know more about, and I really don't like that abbreviated bullet called security enhancements, but maybe that's a we don't want to talk about it out loud publicly because they might have to say something that they don't want to say. Resolved an issue regarding external contacts not appearing properly. Resolved an issue regarding meeting invites using Zoom Phone. Adding multiple duplicate phone audio participants. Resolved an SMS issue. Resolved a screen sharing issue where numbered desktop indicators are displayed in specific situations. On Windows platform.
Robert has his hand up.
Hey,
Robert?
Robert.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to change the subject, but you asked a question about tips and changes on screen share. About 3 months ago, Zoom updated the ability to hand over the control of screen share. Initially, they had it working, then it stopped working, but it's been really stable now and it really works well. So someone can ask for control or the host can hand a person control. And that's really, really stable. So effectively what it means is that you can have one person or one computer with the whole of the slide deck for the whole of the event for all the different presenters, and then just give them control for them to move from slide to slide.
So early on, it's good to know that it's become stable, but I don't want anybody to misunderstand what you just said, because that is remote control of the shared desktop, right? And or remote control of the shared PowerPoint, for instance. So anything in the toolbar, the start menu, whatever the case may be, is all fair game. It's full remote control. Am I correct or incorrect, Robert? in what
Correct.
you're
It's
describing?
control. It's control of that specific screen. You don't get down to controlling the Zoom menu down the bottom, but definitely the menu of the screen share. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Versus, because that behavior was exactly what caused me to purchase a license for internetclicker.com, for instance, so that I could on one of my computers in my studio share a deck, and it has, for the PowerPoint, for instance, and or Keynote, it has just this tiny little plug-in that goes there. And so then anybody who needs to advance a slide or go back, they can use their mobile device, their tablet, their desktop, whatever the case may be. Just go to a website, type in this one code I give them, and they can it's just a big green button to go forward and a big red button to go back, and that's it. And that's the only control they have. And I don't even have to have like focus on the application or anything, because it's built, it's plugged into the presentation software. And that's what caused me to buy that license, until Zoom delivered us slide control. And slide control now, if it doesn't even matter who is sharing. If they're I don't even know if they have to be a co-host, but in my case, I like all the decks to come to me. I merge them into a single PowerPoint deck, because they can each keep their own, master slides and so forth these days. And I just launch it and never have to really look back, because then in slide control, I have a list of all the users in the meeting, and I just check off the ones who will have access to the slide control, which in essence displays to you in the share a little right arrow and a little left arrow on the bottom right portion of the slide, that allows you to advance the slides. Now, if I grant that privilege to 4 different speakers, any one of them or more can advance a slide at the same time. And so I always, put that word of warning out to them that says, hey, be kind to your peers, because if you start clicking on that button, you're going to be advancing their slides while they're speaking. That can be helpful, or it can be a pretty significant deterrent as well. But needless to say, I unsubscribed my license to Internet Clicker when Slide Control came out, and Slide Control supports Keynote, PowerPoint, and I think Google Slides as well. And because it limited that whole remote control give, is what happened to me sometimes as well is, if you have a computer that's launched the presentation and then you give remote control to it so that they can manage the movement of the slides, if I needed to do something on that computer and I moved the mouse, my mouse is their mouse is my mouse. And so now I've actually stood in their way of moving things around as well. So that it's just a comparison. Sometimes it's a perfect solution, and I'm not trying to kind of take down the value of what you shared, Robert. You're right in the sense it's there, it's stable, and so forth, and that's good to hear. But I just want to make sure everybody realizes there's consequences. There's benefits to remote control, and then there's consequences. And I would say if you're given remote control for slide control, I would really look at the feature slide control. And it is a feature you have to enable on the back end Zoom web portal first. And then once it's enabled, then when you share, you just in the toolbar, you end up with the slide control icon, and you can designate it to whoever you wish. And you can change it on the fly. So if I know that speaker 1 is about wrapping up, then I can go ahead and grant it to speaker number 2 and then remove speaker number 1. And I can manage one speaker at a time, has access to it as well. I don't have to give it to everybody at the same time. It's just sometimes that's convenient, and sometimes it's better not to do that. So thanks for the share there.
For what it's worth, I was doing some tech support the other day and using that let me remote control your desktop.
Mhm.
And when you're all working on the same thing and you're doing remote support, it's fantastic. Really,
Big
really
time.
nice feature. Yeah.
Yeah, built right in. I mean, there's products that cost a pretty penny to be able to, give you remote control of of really any system, a Mac or Windows or Linux and so forth. Lois?
Okay, so here's a question. It has to do with the host, that being the owner of the meeting, and the host, that being the person who is currently the host of the meeting. And so here's a question. We've got a bunch of people in a room. The owner of the meeting is not there. Somebody's a host. You got a couple co-hosts. You're doing your stuff. The owner comes in. Now they can automatically take over hostness from whoever's hosting that meeting. And I believe that at this point they get a choice when they come in. Is there any way when that person's in the room to grab hostness from the current host?
So you're saying the account owning host,
Mhm.
they arrive late.
If they arrive late, they get the
Yeah.
choice of taking it or not. If they arrive, they don't take it, they're in the room, they're not a host, can they at that point take over from the host?
Sure. Yeah, because the account owning host on the bottom right corner of the participants window,
Uh-huh.
if they're the account owning host, it will display a reclaim host button for that
That's
person.
what I needed to
Yeah.
hear. Thank you, because I'm never the host, so I have never seen that button.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
And
You
I gotta
bet.
go. I gotta go see a doctor. So
All
I'll see
right.
you some other time.
Good seeing you,
Bye,
Lois.
everybody. Good to
Take
see you.
care. All right. Okay, let's see where I was. Resolved. Did that. Resolved screen issue. Resolved a screen sharing issue for a subset of users regarding Windows installed in parallel. I'm not sure what that means. Resolved a screen sharing issue causing black blocks to obscure shared content. I really want to know if they finally resolved those boxes on top of shares on certain computers, if that's really what that means. Anybody ever deal with that? Somebody shares and you can see these black or sometimes grayed checker boxes, and they're the floating toolbars. The floating toolbar, it's always a Zoom window, but the Zoom window you don't see the buttons. You just see the bar or the settings window, and it floats on top of the share. It's been around a long time, and it's super selective on what computers it affects and what graphics card they have or whatnot. But it's been around a long time, and And commonly it would be triggered if they were sharing, and right before they hit that share button, there's the checkbox that says optimize for video. If they said optimize, it would produce those gray boxes. And if they were on a system that would produce them, that check mark is what would kind of trigger the behavior. If then sometimes the quickest fix, I mean, there are advanced video options, use the GPU, don't use the GPU, and so forth, that you can kind of mess with. But if you can't find resolve with that, then the easiest way is to don't optimize for video. But if they have embedded video, then you're kind of, at the weekend of delivering that video that's embedded in the deck, that will be a really low frame rate. And so they'll be delivering jumpy video. So not always an ideal situation, kind of that tech rehearsal day, it becomes super important. Run it, find the problem, try to fix it. If you can't fix it, pull the videos out of those slide presentations and play them separately from a different system. And because there is an advanced sharing option to share videos, video files specifically, that does deliver 720p and a better frame rate, about 25 frames a second versus just a regular share. So that something you should look forward to or prepare for ahead of time. Robert.
I've actually never seen that issue on a Mac.
I've never seen it on a Mac either, quite honestly. Yeah.
I've seen it on Windows machines, and there seem to be two cases on Windows machines. One is where there's just a very, very low spec computer. And the other one is where people have hundreds of apps open, and usually we're just asking them to leave and restart their computer and come back in. Yeah. That resolves the issue. So it's definitely a resource associated issue.
Yeah. I mean, I back in the day, I read a couple of fixes that were down into the registry itself. So I'm not exactly sure what they were doing or changing with those recommendations. I will say I had a client who just brought me back to this nightmare of these gray boxes, which is really kind of a pain in the butt. Because when somebody is sharing, so if I share, I'll share my Zoom window and my Zoom desktop. While I'm sharing, if, let's say, I'll bring up like video settings. Now I have everything set up to show my Zoom windows during sharing, so you see that. But imagine if that was just like a gray checkered box or, black checkered box. That's all you would see. You wouldn't see the content of the window, but it would be a Zoom window that they can't successfully mask out and show you what's behind it. So one thing that you can do is you can get familiar with those keyboard commands, Control-Alt-Shift-H for hide, or drop down the more button and tell it to hide the meeting controls. And that can, in fact, help. It's not immediate, but you give it a moment or so and things will go away. Now, the settings window is an explicit ask to display this, so that's not going to go away. But you notice the toolbar completely vanished. Even the green leftover that's usually there indicating that I'm sharing, it vanishes with that option. And so that can go away. But in my customer's case, she was super familiar with that process of hiding the meeting controls during a share. But then, and it used to work really well, but then with, Zoom versions revving up as they do, there came this time where she would hide them, go back to talking. But the next person who hit the waiting room or got into the meeting from the waiting room, I don't remember whether it was pre-entry or entry, every time a chat preview would pop up, boom, they were back. Boom, they were back. But I mean, it was like the most frustrating thing ever. So then I got on a remote session with her to try to troubleshoot, her system and try some combinations on graphic processing and so forth, to find out, of all things, and I was completely unprepared for this finding, because I'd been supporting her for quite a while, and she was joining her Zoom meetings via the browser the entire time, and I had no idea. And so we got the client installed and updated. I think she had it, but got it updated and showed her, how to confidently use the client, not the browser. And the moment she got in with the client, the gray box issue went away. It's like, oh, we had dealt with it for a while. And I was like, wow, that was a big mind blow for me. So there's all kinds. Be super sensitive to what client they're using, what operating system they're using. Make sure you know whether it's the browser or or the actual installed client, because most of the time they don't know. They just click on a link, right? And whatever the operating system has done in the past is what it remembers to do again, and it's just the same old process for them. So that was a fresh experience. That wasn't more than like 3 months ago, so it's still kind of fresh in my mind. All right, back to so let's see if there's any other resolves that catch our attention here. Call agents, SMS keypad dialer issue, recording. Resolve an issue with recording notifications text. That was a Windows platform. Zoom Assistant. Network connection. There's a network connection issue causing audio and video freezes on the Mac. Has been resolved. Contact center. Resolved a screen sharing issue for a subset of users where the top toolbar slowly flickers during a slide presentation on the Mac platform. Resolved an issue with higher CPU on Linux. Resolved an in-meeting chat issue on Linux. Resolved an issue regarding meeting controls appearing without prompting while viewing a screen share on Android. Waiting room issue where a waiting room with video would cause participants to have no audio ability upon joining the meeting on iOS. Resolved a screen reader issue with the waiting to start the meeting notification on iOS. Resolved an issue where a call could not be established when a call was forwarded from an iOS device. Resolved a screen sharing issue when sharing photos on iOS. Resolved an issue regarding problem report submission on iOS. And this says the enhanced feedback form feature has been pulled from this release due to a late deployment issue. Good stuff. They've been busy. Got to give it to them. They do stay busy.
Robert's got his hand up again.
Hello, Robert.
I didn't mean to say again. Like
again, what do you want, Robert?
There are a lot of new releases for screen sharing. And one of the things that I think I'm going to test now with this new version is to see if they've resolved the issue of actually bringing down the menu. When the menu hides at the top of the screen, sometimes you just can't initiate it, because usually you go up with your mouse and wiggle a little bit and it comes down. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it just won't come down. And you've got to hit between a very narrow middle spot of the screen to get it to come down. So I don't know if they've resolved that, but it's something that seems also to be dependent on the computer. So I don't know what actually causes the problem. Have you seen that, Jeff?
Yes. I'm kind of testing that out right now. Let me share and see if you guys can see all this while I do it. So the toolbar is up top. I'm going to put it all the way up top, and as I move my mouse away, it floats up. Right. And that's what you're describing there. I'll kind of
Correct.
clean that display up a little bit. So if I pull my mouse down again, all right. So if I go to the top, outside of that green and red portion, I'll never get a response for sure. This I've identified previously. If I go to the red portion, I get no response. But if I go anywhere on the green, that's in my case, that's what seems to actively get its attention. And then if I rest on the green, then I can bring up kind of what's being shared as well. But are you having problems? Is your description that you're having problems getting response from it, mousing over even the green portion of the active share?
Yeah, I have seen that and see it quite often, and it's on Windows machines.
I will say a moment ago, I showed you this hide floating meeting controls. And I'm really glad I remembered the shortcut Control-Alt-Shift-H. But because when I did that, it was super effective. Like, it's gone, right? And tapping my Alt key, it does put it back in my Zoom window, which I didn't notice before. But if I want that floating toolbar again, I so far have not found any way to get it back other than the keyboard shortcut Control-Alt-Shift-H, and then that'll pop up that floating sharing toolbar again. So, and I can get two versions of them if I hit the Alt key now that they're showing. So up top and down below. But I'll just say, if you ever find yourself in a spot where you have no toolbar, you just don't know where it is, where it went, and so forth, tap your Alt key and see if that makes it visible to you. And if that doesn't work, then in fact try that. I mean, somebody will probably need to confirm for me, but I'm assuming the Mac, I have one next to me, but is Command-Shift-Alt-H is my guess, the equivalent to that. But on Windows, Control-Shift-Alt-H for hide, and it's a toggle. So one of those two, Alt or Control-Shift-Alt-H or Command-Shift-Alt-H, I believe, on the Mac, that should get you a toolbar somewhere that's visible.
And just in case you forget, Jeff, you can just go to the controls on your Zoom client, the settings, and you've got the keyboard shortcuts there, so you can see them and find them.
Yeah, but how do you get to settings if you can't even see a toolbar?
Oh, I didn't realize that it is in the bottom toolbar as well. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's tough. It's not. It's my challenge is always trying to support somebody through this, disappearing act or whatnot. On Windows, it's like what the answer to my question is like, well, how do you get to settings if you don't have a toolbar? Well, it's mouse over the Zoom icon and the taskbar down below, and it shows you multiple Zoom windows, and one of them is the main Zoom client window, which then has the gear icon, which will get you to settings. But it's just, you've got to just really just having a pretty decent knowledge of all the different entry points inside Zoom, and then the functionality of your operating system as well, things that can help you that way.
Justin had a comment. He
Justin?
took his hand down, but he may still have it.
It was the same one that Jeff just said.
Which was?
Go to your toolbar and find the actual Zoom window to get to your settings.
Ah, Yeah. 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 I mean, I don't know. Seems like there's always, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've just gone to the video up caret, to get to the general settings, because I know it just opens the settings dialog and I can change, from where I land versus to where I actually want to be. But just having enough, practice and use and so forth. Anyways, what else? David Paskin.
No, I'm playing with, ignore my hand. Sorry.
No, don't. I'm not going to ignore your hand.
Oh God.
I was going to reach out to you and say, how are things coming? I mean, this guy last week, who was a week or two ago, I can't imagine why in the world I'd go to Zoom Cuts. Oh, Zoom Cuts. What, because he fell in love with ZoomOSC. I get it. Then the following week, he's all over the forums doing Zoom Cuts. It's like,
I'm trying. Here's what I've learned. What I've learned is that you don't have to be an expert in Zoom Cuts, but you do have to know what you do have to know enough in Zoom in Mac shortcuts to make it work. And that's my problem, is I've never used shortcuts before. And so I have no idea how to build them. And some of them, I have some of them working. Like I can now join a whole bunch of meetings just with a button, which is fantastic. I have a lot of learning to do still.
oh, you and me both. I mean, I come with, the advantage and background of programming, and so my mind, understands conditional logic and loops and so forth. That's not a challenge for me. But the way it's implemented in shortcuts is definitely a fresh approach. Once I see how they've implemented it, I fully understand while loops and for loops and so forth. But and I think one of those is supported and one's not. But needless to say, I'm with you. And then really kind of, it's not Zoom Cuts is not at all limited to just doing something for Zoom. It's like, pull from this app in the operating system and put it into Zoom, or from Zoom out to that app in the operating system, or it's crazy powerful. So it's exciting for sure on, the possibilities, really the endless possibilities at that. Justin.
And that,
go ahead,
sorry,
David.
I just want to say,
Justin.
and that goes back to what if you have experience with Mac shortcuts, then I think that the power of this is immediately evident. If you don't, then like me, because I'm a nitwit, then then it's not quite as obvious. But I'm trying. I'm getting into it. What I'm really excited about. This is, I think, the way that I'll learn best. Is I'm excited for other people to build shortcuts, not so that I can just use the free shortcuts, but so that I can see how they're built and then learn how to build my own. And I've done that a little bit with some of the ones that Liminal built, but some of those are really complicated. So it's a little over my head.
Yeah.
Any chance this is coming to Windows?
I doubt it. I mean,
Do they even have a shortcuts
I
thing in Windows?
I don't know that they really have anything that I would say is equally equivalent, to shortcuts and the power and the maturity of shortcuts. But, there's probably similar efforts, I guess. If somebody knows more, you can certainly chime in, but nothing rings a bell to me.
Its equivalent is probably PowerShell and the scripting that you can do there, but it's not the same.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, that's still all CLI, right? As far as command line. but I mean, PowerShell does, it does give you that reach into virtually anything in the operating system and beyond. But you need to know how to write code and syntax and so forth to be able to, call on it, where shortcuts is still, it's so Mac, it's drag and drop, it's click and drop downs, I mean, it's, you don't have to worry about the structure or the syntax of code. And so it's certainly, one is a lot less intimidating to at least go try, right? For a lot of people. But yeah,
Jeff, I think Windows does have that option. It's called a batch file in DOS.
yeah, yeah, that's where I started years and years ago. Yeah, I didn't even know what a batch file was, and the one in particular that I remember deleting it. It was called auto exec batch. And all of a sudden, like, my computer wouldn't boot the way it used to boot, and I'm like, oh, I had to have somebody, save me. But then, it matured. I think I used a Norton product, my auto exec bat called the Norton product, which colorized my screen and let me down arrow through menus that I built. And, I mean, it was beautiful, but they, put a layer on top of DOS. So, I mean, I remember back then, it's like, there's going to be kids who they don't even know what DOS is, I mean, I thought somebody said DOS yesterday or day before on office hours. And, I mean, it's like, it's an acronym, right? And for disk operating system. I mean, and it just seems like such a limiting 3 sets of words, right? A disk operating system. Is that it? Compared to what Windows does as an OS, or Mac does as an operating system. I mean, certainly not limited to the disk, right? But yeah, I remember I used to take the book home, DOS, I think it's DOS 3.3, and on my 286 with a 20 megabyte hard drive. It was screaming. But needless to say, the places we have come to. All right.
That's a trip down memory lane, Jeff.
No doubt. I think, well, we had, was it EVGA? It wasn't VGA monitor, but it was a derivative. I think it was EGA or EVGA or something like that.
VGA.
And then
not to be confused with the current guys that actually make NVIDIA cards. But yes, there was EVGA back in the day.
Yeah. And I remember that monitor went out on us. It was at our work, and so they gave us a temporary monitor, and it was a amber screen, and it was the one and only time, as many thousands or tens of thousands of hours I've spent in front of a computer, I had a headache that felt like I had a stake going through my brain. It about killed me. It just, and I realized it was from looking at that amber screen. For some reason, it just really, really nailed me. And I'm like, wow, I'll never look at one of those screens again. It was nuts. So anyways, those were the days. But all right, well, those are the release notes. I don't know, if somebody, I was going to ask Justin, and you're still here.
I'm still here. I also had a Zoom cuts comment before we.
I was going to ask you, if you spent some time and what your thoughts are on it and so forth.
I briefly spent a little bit of time on it, but the one thing I'm really hoping for is once they get past merging that into the Zoom client itself, that it'll also come to ZoomOSC, because there are some cool things you can do with Zoom cuts that, yes, the commands are in ZoomOSC, but it takes a lot to build them out, or doesn't even have ways to do it. Like if I wanted to take a list of attendees for attendance, there's no great way in the Zoom OSC companion module to get that list and write it to a file. That's 30 seconds to write a Zoom shortcut, or a shortcut to do that. Same thing with like the breakout room one we saw Andy mention, or the introduction one that Adam showed off last week. Like those, could I do that with ZoomOSC and companion? Yes, but I'm manually controlling a lot of that stuff versus just click the button and then I sit back and let it go. So I'm hoping that at some point they will merge it into the ZoomOSC client as well.
Yeah. I I mean, I've gotten a distinct understanding that that's definitely the plan. I mean, Andy's made it pretty clear that this is a a early release for feedback from the community and so forth. That so my suspicions is that it will, and it is a product. I don't know how necessarily realistic it would be to think the same of OSC, for instance, being part of the native client. But
yeah, I don't see
Zoom cuts
OSC. Yeah,
easily,
you're right. I don't see
easily.
OSC going to there.
Yeah,
But the other way around, yeah.
yeah. But Zoom cuts is it's all about that. But that does mean that does, I mean, it's a Mac app, right? And it it's really leveraging that platform. So that would mean if it does get integrated, there will be a pretty significant divide by all indications.
Computer here,
of-
we actually have a
Who is that? Tom. Do some mute. Between the two platforms, right? The functionality in one, functionality in the other. And it's pretty, it's kind of, it's hidden. I mean, it's not anything you see in Zoom, even if it was in the native client. It's just because that native client is installed on a Mac. If you go to Mac shortcuts, it'll be there. The options will be there. So, the common user will never see it and probably even know about it. But if they, ever want to graduate into, going and playing on that platform a bit, they certainly will be able to. So I think it's very, very deliverable by all indications. So timeline, who knows? For now, I mean, I don't love, multiple. I mean, I can have my native client here. I can have my OSC client next to me, which I've had for a long time. Now I've got to have a Zoom Cuts client, but because it's been described that, hey, this is temporary, then that's, I'll deal with that. If I can see things early and help influence the development, whether it's broken pieces or missing features or wish list, whatever the case may be, I'll deal with, the time it takes to, get it mature and released and so forth. So enjoy being that part of that process. So what else is new? Frank, anything on your mind?
Nope, nothing right now. Thanks.
He's like, hey man, you just said my name. All right. How about you, Tom? Got a few on camera that I'm going to just shout out to.
I got to head out, but thank you all for the insights. And the Alt key on a Macintosh is called the Option key.
It's true. It's true. My key it says Alt in smaller letters, but it says Option in bigger letters on that button as well.
The newer Mac keyboards just
option only, huh?
Option only, yeah.
Uh-huh. Very good. Thanks for sharing. Good to see you. All right. What else is new? Companion 3 is in release candidate 2, which is commonly the one before the fully released stable. Is that the way you understand it as well, Justin?
I don't know how many RCs they're going to do. I'm going to push for them to do at least one more, because the companion beta actually fixes all of the feedback things that you had been talking about, to have both the original and the new set, and fixes the bugs that you found in them. And so they should all work now. RC2 still has those bugs in it.
I downloaded and installed 5992 right before we started the meeting. So I haven't really been able to mess with it much. I guess if I go to page one, and that was a pretty nice way of describing how I've been talking about it, because I haven't been haven't been a happy and friendly and camper about it, as you know. So hasn't been personal. I will definitely say that. It just
You had some very good points, and I will say it was a bit of a misstep on my part to remove the feedback, not realizing you and other people were using that for other things besides just the participant feedback. And I have had some conversations just recently with some of the Zoom folks and some other people involved in the ZoomOSC module to go, how do we get more community feedback? How do we understand more of these use cases so that going forward, we don't accidentally do this same thing again, not realizing that people are using it certain ways. And it is a gap that we currently have, that we don't have a whole lot of use cases and don't have a whole lot of community feedback coming into the module. And that's something we're working on trying to fix going forward.
Good to hear. So if so let me share what I'll just do this on vBinks easier. Back. I go. There we go. All right. So so feedback, the original feedback options are now viewable on participant buttons. So that you knew, and I've confirmed that they're there. What I did do here on this one, because it lost its graphic there. So I under feedback there, where it had just the original feedback options, I went down and manually added an advanced participant. And the moment I did that, it immediately removed any PNG that I had represented in there, right? So the I'm guessing the guidance, unenforced guidance, right? Because I have both. It lets me build both. Naturally, that would be a companion enforcement, which wouldn't be the place for it to exist. But if I put in both, now I maybe this behavior will change if I change the order of this, though. If I put the advanced option up top, I was kind of thinking that would be trumped by the previous feedbacks that were below it, because it is processed in order, but that's not the case.
It is.
So once an advanced feedback piece is added, all bets are off on applying graphics, right?
Yeah. The reason you're not seeing the other ones there is because we never clear that graphic out. So it's even when nothing is turned on as far as those states, it still has an empty, transparent graphic on it.
Yeah.
So if you added another feedback that changed that, actually, I don't even know if you can remove the PNG. There's no way to actually remove the PNG. So that's the ultimate problem.
This is my OSC client.
Yeah.
So if I bring up my OSC client to
so there is no way to
raise
truly
its hand,
fix this.
That so if I activated one of those, then the raised hand does show up. If I were to then pull that down, because as far as processing order goes,
yeah, it's because you changed the raised hand old feedback puts a PNG, so you basically overwrote the PNG that we did. So totally that would work. Unfortunately, until you change
when
the graphic,
advanced feedback was the first entry, this is what it put up. It just went away so fast because I had my hand raised on the original feature. It very quickly overwrote it with my designated PNG. Now that I've put the advanced feedback below it, my hand raised, it was up technically, but so quickly replaced we never saw it, by the advanced as well. So Yeah. So you're putting up, a full 72 by 72 transparent PNG, and then you're putting up this combo, that combo, that combo, that combo based on the on statuses of multiple deals. So okay.
Or today. We have
For
some
today.
we have some proof of
Yeah.
concepts that we are going to start working on to try to see if is there some better arrangement of icons, some better ways to do some potential customization in there. There's some things that have come out since that advanced feedback was created that might be an option. There's a stackable PNG proof of concept library that somebody did. And so if it performs, that's a potential option. So there's lots of options we're looking at to give like that.
However, I mean, I don't even mind hearing and abiding by, hey, it just can't be done well today. I'm okay with that. Like if because it's a framework, right? There's the companion core, then there's the module. They have to, work with each other and so forth. So I don't mind that. My my ideal is that logically, like I've said, hey, I love the logic in the sense that, it recognizes, the status. I'm assuming it does recognize the on and the off status of a particular, mic or camera or whatnot, but it's only reacting to the ons, which is fine. But I'd like both sides to be, responded to if I chose to. The part that really, the part that gets me, I mean, as you can see, I've spent, a ton of time on something I absolutely plan and haven't been able to sell. And quite honestly, I'm sure grateful that I didn't take anybody's money yet on this design, because I would have been screwed had they upgraded or gotten an update to companion and all of a sudden it blew up. That would have made me even less happy for sure. Because I didn't have options to even turn it off or fix it. I mean, I could roll it back, but rolling back to a previous version of companion is a nonsense suggestion. I'm not saying that to you. I also heard that from, I think it was Jonas who said, it's like, oh really? So relinquish all the improvements and bug fixes that companion has released so that I can get back to, the original feedback features of a module. And it's like, that's just a crazy, it's a crazy, suggestion, because it's just not realistic, keeping up. I mean, like I know, and David was there, is we've been supporters and feedback providers, not only to the module, but companion itself, 3.0 in beta for months. And, it's one of those things that, we want this product to be, good and strong and so forth. My ideal would be, if there's a way to do it, is you publish to us. You say, hey, if it's a binary 0-bit 1-bit type approach, or whatever the case may be, I don't know how how you actually implement it at the end of the day. Mine was, hey, that initial submission was, hey, first bit's the mic. It's either a 0 or it's a 1. Second bit's the camera. It's a 0 or it's a 1, right? And you just bring these bits together and you just publish to us. That combination needs, if you want something to display from that combination, that's the name of the file. That combination, that's the name of the file. That combination, that's the, you just have to be, my wish would be, at least at this juncture, that we have to comply exactly to the location and the name of a file that bit combination, multi-bit combination, will be expecting to see. And you'll either see it if it's accurate, and you won't if it's inaccurate. But that gives me, that continues to give me and others the freedom of the design with the support of the logic, and and not lose not lose the investment. Because I mean, believe you me, I would love to be able to take advantage of the logic in my design, but I can't. It's either one or the other. It's on or it's off. It's like, no, Jeff, you may have been one of the inspirations of this automated feedback logic, but you can't have it because it ended up delivering a cosmetic result. And it's just like, well, that sucks, So to me, I think that's just the biggest piece. So I look forward to, I mean, for now, that I at least my previous code is there and functional the way it was, all the design and so forth. So that hasn't changed. It hasn't been stomped on. And so that's all good. You explained why, but, I mean, quite honestly, to take a new button and go to presets to this and realize that, the way it had to be done for now is that there's like 8 more groups, and the only reason there's separate groups is because of this advanced feedback piece. It's like, and this adds, and that's really me, not me as a user as much as me as a teacher, when I'm trying to, guide somebody into the module and how simple it is and to get started and so forth. All of a sudden that's simple to get started. It really, part of that got taken away, with the expansion of, 8 brand new groups, all for this one feature, and these were just components that were affected by it. So if you're a component that was affected by the feature, you have to have a new group. It's like, man, that's a bummer. But
I
But
do
at the same
agree with
time,
you and would
if
like
you-
to have one group, and that's where we're heading
Yeah.
towards. What we got to figure out what goes in that group, because as you've seen, if you put the advanced feedback in there, then the rest of the stuff in there doesn't necessarily work the way you expect. And if
Yeah.
you remove out all the other stuff and leave the advanced feedback, then someone like yourself that wants to be able to potentially drag them over and have those individuals now doesn't have that, and you have to go manually build the button. So it's a balance, and it's something that
Yeah.
we're going to look at of what is the right balance to have, so we don't have the groups. What should be the default? Is it the individuals? Is it the advanced? Because it is too many. This is a stopgap so that we could
Yeah.
at least bring back the stuff that you needed and some other people needed as well as still have the advanced feedback that some people had moved over to. But
Mhm.
long term, we don't want to have all the individual groups. Long term, we want to figure out how to do the customization that both makes it easy for you to customize and it still performs. We don't want to kill either the performance or give you customization that takes you hours upon hours to swap out the images. I think it's worse for you to have to take tons of hours and thousands of clicks to swap out images versus having it just set for you. Or figure out how can we globally set them? Like, it's a balance, and we're going to look at all of those. And
If you had the ability to support my previous description that says, hey, here's the structure, people. If the mic is on and that's the only thing that's on, that's this file name at that location. Like, if that's perfectly structured and that is what it is, the ability to change an icon, either location, size, color, whatever, that's one file, and it affects every button that has leveraged it, right? Even if I have hundreds of them or whatever, that's a big win. But then I can see myself, dreaming and wishing for the next level, which is, what if I have more than one style in a panel, and I don't want that graphic to represent, I want this graphic. They're both representing a microphone on, but they're different graphics. So, can we go there? So, it can get, ugly fast. I get that. And there has to be, like this line to go down, really based on where the module and companion and so forth are right now. I mean, ideally, sometime down the road, companion will support multiple, transparent PNGs, and it'll be a non-issue, right? I mean, lay this one on top of that one, on top of that one, and as long as the icons are, not stomping on each other and all the other pixels are transparent, it's a absolute no-brainer based on the previous, near existing feedback system, but that's not the case, right? And so I appreciate the efforts of, kind of going after the logic in the meantime. So, and I know it serves some people. It just definitely doesn't serve, my investments anyways, I mean, I've spent a lot of time.
And I'm not sure long-term either that we'll be able to get to I think we could get to, I have one set of graphics I can overwrite and it will do it for all those advanced feedback buttons.
Mhm.
But I don't know if we'll be able to get to the individual ones, because right now there's 32 states for each that determines which graphic shows up. So if you think even for one button every second, it's got to examine 32 as you states. As you start going through and build out like 18 participants for the host, and then you have group 1, group 2, group 3, gallery participants, pretty soon you're into thousands of feedbacks that it's got to monitor and respond to every second. And you're starting to reach that. This may actually impact us performance-wise with the amount of feedbacks that we're now making it have to update all at once. Because every one of those images, it has to go, should it be on? Should it be off? So for all 32 of those states, if it was built into the way the current feedback or the original feedback system worked, it would have to look at each one of those. So I don't know that we'll get to that state. We've talked about it, but we are definitely worried about the performance side of that piece of it. But I think changing them out globally.
Is it always a clean, fresh read? Is there the opportunity to cache or preload, these images into memory so that it isn't a reread from, the drive or whatnot?
It's more that the way companion works for feedbacks is every feedback you put into that list in feedbacks, it every time that feedback actually makes a change, it has to go in and update that. So behind the scenes, we say, if you say spotlight someone and or someone turns their camera on, it goes and reads a bunch of feedback. So all these different actions, we tell it, do I need to go and actually update all of the feedback so that all the button states are right? And then it just goes and reads every feedback that you have across the system. So every group feedback, every index, every gallery. And that's where you can easily get into the several thousand feedbacks to look at. But we are pretty sure as long as that stacked graphics proof of concept that somebody else has written works and performs, that we could at least give you the ability in the config to say, here's my 10 images. Here's my mic on, my mic off, my camera on, my camera off. And wherever you position them is what's going to show. And we still would do the advanced logic like you saw, but you could overwrite those images as you please. We think we can do that as at least an initial balance to give you some control over what is the design of the graphic look like, what's the position you want, what's the icon, what's the color, whatever you want to put in there to indicate that status.
Yeah.
I have a question. Hey, this is Muddy, and sorry I'm on the road, so my eye contact is not great, but I wanted to at least ask this question. As I understand it, Justin, from listening to you, so the feedback system is, Zoom is not pushing notification that something changed. The system has to go in and kind of query what's the status of everything every time. So it's not, it's really, that's why it has to fire kind of every second, because it has to keep checking that status. There's nothing that's kind of pushing that change in status back. Am I understanding that right?
So there's two pieces. So ZoomOSC, there's a refresh config to say how often to refresh. It sends all the states back to us, but then within Companion, when we receive that, we have to tell it, do we want to respond and and which feedbacks do we want to update when we get that data for ZoomOSC. And so that's why they're updating near real time, is because the default config says every second, send me the ZoomOSC data over to Companion, and then Companion will update all of whatever the feedbacks are.
Got it. So ZoomOSC actually is pushing that data. It's just pushing all that data every second, and then Companion has to decide, you know, do I take action based on that? Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for that clarity, and thanks for, you know, really all the efforts. I mean, I know I've been, you know, a little bit rough on you, but, you know, like I said, it's not personal. You just happen to be, you know, the developer making the efforts and delivering the deliverables, and part of it felt a bit like a surprise, but I own part of that, because, you know, we do have some Discord exchanges that hit me when I didn't have a ton of time to, you know, reply as well. So I'll certainly, you know, own that and sit back and wait. But it's one of those things where, you know, this happy medium, I mean, the fear, you know, my fear is, you know, timing, right? I mean, we're on RC2 right now on Companion 3, and, you know, if I tell you, if the code that was there even yesterday made the release of Companion, that would not have been a good situation at all. And so that's really, I mean, it was a pretty big feature release when RC1 existed, you know, which is some fairly unusual practice, but
I would say actually it came out about a month or so before RC1 came out. So it was in there for a bit. We fixed it to bring it back while RC1 was out, and actually had a couple bugs and we didn't know they were going to do RC2. I didn't even know RC2 came out until it showed up. But we definitely, when you put that GitHub issue in earlier week, it was like, oops, like there's a bug in the system. We've got to get that fixed, which we expect sometimes in release candidates. You find bugs late and got to put it back in there.
Well,
now it's much more stable.
I mean, I've been on the release candidate a couple of different times, but I'm still running out of the experimental piece, because I want the freshest pushes from you guys, you know, because there's been this iterative, let's get it fixed and stable, to have the old and the new together. That I have visibility there where I wouldn't have that visibility in the RC. So I haven't even actually looked at RC2 to see. I don't imagine the old and the new is that made RC2. Do you know?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
And just from a naming convention, it should be beta. I'm not even sure what's in the experimental for Companion. It normally, the right ones right now are beta and stable. Experimental's like something maybe in 6 months, maybe like they're working on some like way future stuff. But beta would be the one that's right behind the RC.
Yeah. And I don't at all download I've never downloaded an experimental.
Yeah, it's more for anyone listening. Like, I don't want you to be on experimental and wonder why stuff may be kind of funky. It's like beta or stable. And if you're using ZoomOSC, beta would be the one to be on. And we'll have to figure out when RC3 is going to come out.
Yeah, I need to look at the GitHub kind of issue list in Companion. I haven't been there in a week or so. Let's kind of see how that's narrowing down, because they're only doing fixes now. They're not doing any feature enhancements while it's in the release candidate state, right?
So I do have a ZoomOSC Companion question for you, Jeff.
Sure.
I've noticed on mine, when I leave meetings, most of my Zoom data clears out, but my host group leaves the people in there. And then many times, if I don't stop and start the module before my next meeting and I join it, I get users that aren't even in the meeting showing up in my host group. I don't know if you've seen that same thing.
I have the same experience.
Okay.
and coupled with, if I join with OSC or ISO OSC and run a meeting, and then it ends, and then I try to join the next meeting and not restart the whole thing, there's times it won't join again without me, killing ZoomOSC and then relaunching it and and starting anew. So now I'm not saying that happened like yesterday or in the last week, but it historically, it's one of those. I now have the habit because of historically it happened to me too many times to where I leave the meeting, I kill ZoomOSC. I at times, especially with that lingering data, I'll stop and restart the module so that it clears itself out. So it's one of those things, and it's not a have to. It's one of those, you could put an on start trigger. I just haven't done it yet. Do an on start trigger that actually stops and restarts the module, because from the companion module it will restart any module, right? The companion core, it can restart any module, and I could make that a bit of an automated process there. And with with shortcuts now, I mean, I could kill and relaunch ZoomOSC in a heartbeat as well. So I got a lot of thoughts going on, not quite enough time to support them all, but just kind of that reset button and get ready for the next meeting, and away you go. So very good. Well, Mike wrote, did Muddy? Yeah, Muddy's still on. Yeah, I just noticed in the chat, he said, did we talk about breakout rooms and webinar? And we read the feature, but naturally we're not in a webinar to, go test them and so forth. But yeah, I think it'll be a good test to run, in the sense that they use the word similar to breakout rooms and meetings, and that catches my eye a little bit. That says, why use the word similar if they're not the same, I guess. So it'll be interesting to see if in fact it is really similar, or it is the same and they just used the word similar or whatnot. The numbers were the same: 1,000 people per breakout room, 100 breakout rooms, and so forth. So they didn't talk anything about, can you, from a webinar with breakout rooms, can you broadcast to those breakout rooms like you can with meetings? Maybe that's where it starts to, differentiate. I don't know for sure. So just
Well, and I wonder,
time and testing.
I wonder if participants will have audio and video in breakout rooms, because webinar, you're usually listen only mode, sometimes speaking, but I wonder if cameras come on when you go in breakout rooms. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. So if you had an expectation, what would your expectation be for cameras and audio in webinar based breakout rooms, Buddy?
Well, that's a good question. And my expectation would be that you would get an invitation to turn a camera on, but it wouldn't come on automatically, right? So I wouldn't want, and I don't think Zoom would do this, but I wouldn't want anybody's camera to come on right away. But I would love that increased level of engagement to get an invitation to turn cameras on. I mean, that's a big part of the breakout room experience in my assessment.
Yeah, I don't know. I would inquire to John Edelson, who's here as well, and I'd love to get your thoughts, because you've been around and teaching tech, as a professor for years and so forth. I have run around for years and years and years saying that tech continues to make its best attempt to be human, be near human in behavior and logic and processing and so forth. And if you really look at all the advances that have taken place, there's a lot of areas that it really continues to struggle, just just to prove just how complex human behavior is, and so forth as well. But if I go to the human behavior side, if I were to walk into a in-person event and describe, hey, we're going to go to the keynote. If I walk through those doors, you may as well just hear the words, sit down and shut up, right? Because that's what a keynote is all about. You're not there to be seen. You're not there to be heard. I mean, you may be seen as far as a head, or a silhouette or something like that, but that's about it. But when I leave that keynote and I go down the hall to a breakout session, I do expect to be potentially heard and seen. And so my own expectations, if technology's looking to, at least as a default set of behaviors, mimic, the real world keynote to breakout sessions, I would say that the ability to easily have cameras on and microphones on, the onus being on the host to actually create invitations, I feel might be a little heavy. I mean, especially when you can put up to 1,000 people in a breakout room. But the onus for the host to flip the switch that says participants can turn their cameras on, flip the switch that they can, unmute themselves, and or flip the switch that they can raise their digital hand. And so I would say, they can't unmute themselves. They can turn on their cameras, because this is meant to be a more collaborative space, kind of community-based and so forth. But I'll make them raise their hand, and then when I call on them, it will request that they unmute, which I've already given them, or that gives them, because I'm the host asking, it gives them the ability to respond and unmute, right? So yeah, it's always interesting to see. John, you have thoughts about that?
Well, human behavior is very hard to predict and work with. And that dog's even harder to control, right? Actually, dogs are a lot easier to control as a human. There's two thoughts. One of my first experiences in the television production class is the instructor of that class said, sometime in your television career, you'll be given a choice to work with children or animals in a TV show. Choose animals because you can put them in cages. So I think the challenge that we have is this mix between old and new, and generations between, whether it's X, Y, Z. We don't use reins to drive our car, but there were people who would have preferred reins to do it. I have a Tesla now that has the half wheel that a pilot would have, and my wife wants the whole wheel. But she still puts her hands on the same place on that wheel. So, I mean, they're old habits. Zoom was very successful at its launch because it was so transparent and easy. So the best technology is transparent to the user. But there's so many things that my kids, and I call myself an analog cowboy in a digital world. My kids grew up in a digital world. My first video teleconference was in 1978. My son did his first See You, See Me video conference when he was in 5th grade. So when people talk to him about, well, what's it like doing video conferencing? And he said, well, what do you mean what it's like? He was in the fishbowl. He saw it all the time. I think this is the challenge that you have when we even refer to breakout rooms, keynote, we're imposing those expectations. It might have been better to have a whole different vocabulary in deciding and describing what is an interactive space. And the behaviors are not that, agreed upon. Like you say with a keynote, I know when I've gone to the front, because I want to be at the front, I'd like to get the attention of the speaker, and I want to be the first in line to see him when he's, done speaking. I know there's times I go in the back with my friends, and we're hopefully far enough back that we'll talk. during it and not disturb people. And then there's my mode of hanging out at the door, which is really, I'm at the door, but I'm trying to see whether there's anybody who's coming by, because anything would be better than listening to this keynote, which I probably have heard this person do it at 4 other conferences. I think what's happened is, and this is, it's across all. I'm not going to, there's Zoom, Teams, Meet. They have clients who have specific needs, and then they tend to figure out how to incorporate that into the tool without messing up the people who just want to be able to click on a link, be on a meeting, and turn on and off their microphone and camera.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and, I guess back to like the keynote, for instance, if we're going to liken, the experience here, right, to, okay, we're going to do the webinar and then go to breakouts, the webinar being the keynote. In Zoom webinar, we would be putting the muzzle on everybody attending, literally putting the muzzle on. And we don't do that in the real world. We anticipate that everybody will be on good behavior and that they will vocally be muted by their own choice. But if they're not, then maybe we have to have
regards for. But the reality
exactly.
Is we hope for manners, but people are hardly muted. Most of the keynotes that I've been to post-COVID, but it was true beforehand, but not quite as much because there weren't so many chats. But people were in the keynote and they were chatting or texting. And now I've been to people in some keynotes where they're actually Zooming, a whole different Zoom meeting while they're there. Students, I taught for 32 years. And when people were saying, when COVID hit, and a number of my colleagues, because I was teaching online even before it became a thing on our campus. In fact, it was so confusing at Chico that when I did their first online course, the registration system and assigning classes could not happen without a room. So I said, I don't need a room. I'm gonna do this online. They said, well, we can't get it into the campus registration system for students to add and drop the class unless it has a room. So they found a broom closet number, and that was the number for my class. I always worried about that one student who showed up to that broom closet not knowing it's an online class. So I think the challenge that we have is that this change happened as a catastrophe. So people are now defining, well, this is what a webinar is. This is what online learning is. This is, the expectations were whatever pool they got thrown into during the first 2 years of COVID is now that's their base. And it's a little bit like us. We know what elementary school was like now. But I'll tell you, my memories of elementary school are real different than what my grandchildren are going through now. And I think the challenge that we have in terms of people trying to encourage the use of these tools productively is figuring out how do we help people move from what expectations they had to what expectations we want to have. And that's a, my study at the university was in industrial engineering, human performance and behavior. And this is an industrial engineering problem of trying to get people moved into whatever this new space will be. And it's really it's hitting the fan in this back to office. And what does it mean to be back to office and those sorts of things. So I think you ask good questions, but I think all these tools are trying to figure out how much old do we need to have? How much comfort level do people have to know that I'm going to the keynote speaker, that they know this is the first speaker in the day, versus we come up with some other name for webinar, even breakout room is probably a bad term. You know, we use breakout rooms, but we really didn't use breakout rooms. There was a seminar rooms, and you had the big ones, middle ones, small ones. You had conference rooms. So it might have been better if we had used the term conference room rather than breakout room. But for whatever reason, it is breakout rooms.
Yeah.
And the only thing I think out of a breakout room is, why do I want to go into something I need to break out of?
Yeah. Sessions, right? Conferences have sessions, and but then there's that that historical, you know, in-person experience that says there's multiple sessions going on at the same time, and pick your day's track. Out of the 60 sessions going on, you'll have about 8 to choose, you know, that you can fit into your day, and then you feel left out, right? It's like, well, when you start doing it via technology, there's no reason for that overlap necessarily, to where people, you know,
And
are
you
left
gave me
out.
references that when you go to a conference, you're going to go to the keynote room. I go to Vegas enough that I know where the restrooms are. I know where the Uber pickup is.
Yeah.
I know where the lounge is. I generally know their numbering. You stick me in a hall I've never been, and it's as bad as, you know, not knowing what to do in a Zoom meeting, because, you know, I don't know where anything is. They're not all laid out the same. They don't do all the same things.
So very true. So very true. Yeah. Yeah. Lots to get figured out. And then, you know, to implement it with logic. It's that's the real magic, right? Is, you know, not programming to, you know, a given result that's been defined by, you know, the vendor, the development team. You know, you deliver deliver, you know, where's that happy medium of, you know, I mean, kind of James and I's, you know, conversation is put together the logic to deliver the flexibility to create your style of, you know, seminar sessions. You know, I mean, these days everybody wants choices. Hey, if I want to sit and watch something and be distracted, that's my world and my choice, not yours, you know. And it it's tough. I mean,
The
it's
interesting thing is, when CSU Monterey Bay opened up, it was a military base reuse. So the campus really wasn't ready when we started. In fact, we actually had to start classes 3 days late because the fire marshal wouldn't let the students move into the dorm. So the first 2 years of CSU, well, the first year at Monterey Bay, they did an outward bound. And we said, what a great idea to bring all your students to an outward bound experience. And, you know, was it wonderful you thought about that, and out to nature and bonding, and, you know, and we said, you know, yeah, we were really very smart, but also we were forced to it. The fire marshals wouldn't let us into the building. We were going to have them sleep in the tents in the quad, but our quad hadn't been sodded. It was just dirt. Still had tractor marks in it, and it was a long time before they figured out how they were going to do the pathways. And it was really good because I know we had a blueprint of where the buildings were and where the paths were going to be. It turns out those didn't match where the students actually walked.
no.
You know, so when we put in the concrete, on the other hand, some of the paths they made were not the movements that we wanted to have students to do, and didn't really represent where the cafeteria was, which didn't open up. So as soon as the cafeteria opened up in a location, we go, oh, well, we really shouldn't have put the walkways here, because this walkway was where people went to, where all the vending machines were. So we're sort of in that space now. But it is interesting that how much the various platforms have had to conform to similar things. I remember, you know, I won't name them all, but all of them had slightly different ways that you would mute, unmute, arrange things. And COVID, if you look at the various platforms, there's certain things that are pretty much now in a similar location with similar function because they had to do that because people were going to be moving from one to the other. And, you know, my wife always gets frustrated when we come back from a European trip and she turns on the window washer rather than the blinker.
Yeah. True. True.
It was a good show today.
Oh, it's always I enjoy, I enjoy the discussion. Sometimes it's not all wrapped around features, and so forth, but practices and thoughts and and so forth. I
Well, it's a
enjoy.
different pace than when we have presenters,
Mhm.
or whether we're banging on something, and it's a balance. You have different shows for different times and different things.
Yeah. A couple. I don't even know. Was it last week that Andy was on, or the week before? Can't keep track of time, but he was on fire. he was at that show day after day after day, and we got his last presentation, and that boy was on fire, and you could hear it. He's just so well versed. So
He brings a very unique perspective to that Zoom team with his science and computer science background, but it's also his work in theater. So that
yeah.
pretty
So
powerful.
it's amazing. It's an amazing combination, and at his young age, his ability to communicate and logically assess and deliver and the whole bit, it's just
So Mike,
really
why I see
impressive.
here, do you like me to go by Mike or what's
He's
your-
Muddy.
or Muddy?
Yeah, I go by Muddy, but I launched from the car, so I wasn't didn't have my name, and I have my name in there as Mike Muddy to adhere to the office hours real name policy
Oh,
too.
really?
So
How are you enjoying Inside the Stage?
I like it. I admit that I have fallen off a little bit in practice because I love the tools. I think are amazing and what they do, and their target audience of folks that are doing performance-based, entertainment on Zoom. I think those tools are completely next level, and I'm so impressed with what they've done. My role kind of in event production, doing this work within and using the Avio platform a lot with Barry and Blue's work. There was kind of a couple of extra hoops to get some of these tools into that kind of event production.
Hold on one second, guys. I need to take this
world.
call.
All right. Cool. Yeah, I love Avio as well. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, I've heard great things, pretty impressive things about that platform they've put together. That's for sure.
I love it. I just started using it. It's just there's certain things I can't do with it that I'm trying to do with it.
Yeah. Hey, what's been keeping you busy, Tamara? It's been a long time.
I got a job in post-production on a Netflix animated series. So
Very
animation
good.
is kind of like a 1,000-piece puzzle. And it's like my whole job is just collecting files.
Wow.
Art files, sound files, movie files, the files.
Nice. Very cool. Robert, did I see that your hand was up earlier? Is that
Yeah, it was up, and then I had to take a call, so I pulled it down. But I was going to go back, and because you asked about the sort of the expectations on breakout rooms and webinars. From my perspective, working with corporate clients, we usually choose between a meeting or a webinar, depending on the amount of the level of interactivity that the organizers want to have. But if they have chosen a webinar, then the next question I usually get, and it seems as if Zoom may be addressing this question, is, can we have 2 sessions? Now, when you think of breakout rooms and webinars, I sort of think about, here are 2 different sessions where the host is assigning the panelists those sessions, and the attendees are just not moving to those rooms. They're just flicking and reloading their screens and audio, as opposed to physically being in there, because I would find it very, very strange from a legal point of view, when we have customers who have paid for an event, and suddenly their personal data is available for viewing for everyone. For example, if we go into a breakout room where people can switch on their cameras and audio sync. So when you talk about, I haven't seen the tool, I haven't seen it at all, but I would imagine that it would be allocation of panelists to different breakout rooms, and the attendees would be able to select which panelists they want to listen to. So sort of sessions, as you say, more than breakout rooms in terms of meetings where you're doing some form of collaboration, workshop, talking, sharing, etc.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's a great point. In my logical mind, I say, well, give us 2 radio buttons, collaborative or non-collaborative. Just pick a radio button and it will either create a breakout session to a meeting or it'll create a breakout session to yet another webinar, but it's not that simple, I mean, that's, kind of a first choice user interface thing, but no, it's a great point in the sense of, privacy and so forth. I mean, I kind of rewind and say, if it's a webinar, which is, we're not going to see the audience, we're not going to hear from the audience, it's just a deliverable, it's a theater. You may as well be shooting light through film on a screen, right? Is basically what a webinar is, with the exception of, like live Q&A, potentially chat. But chat is, to your point, is that potential privacy exposure as well, because it will or can put up your profile picture these days, next to your chat entry, your name, and so forth. And but my question was going to be, if it's this, primarily this one-way deliverable, and you've sent out invitations that advertises when this live event occurs, why ask the world to carve out, an hour or 2 of their time just because you've chosen when it's going to be live? When, what differentiates the need and or requirement for it to be live versus technically a video on demand? And just play it. You can tell them when you're going to play it, but at least, like post produce it and play it. There's no interaction expectation anyways, and you can still have Q&A on and you can still have chat on, but just play the video, into the webinar. And that, the replay approach is, I think, especially convenient for the speakers, right? I mean, they can pre-record anytime their schedule allows them, then it can be post-produced, right? Put together into a playable format that's smooth from beginning to end. So they've had all the flexibility, and they're your big dollar items as far as your costs. And then you play it, because I come down to, if you're going to ask an audience to carve out time to be there live, there's got to be something going on during live that can't possibly be offered during replay. Otherwise, why ask them to show up live? And I don't. I mean, those comments are meant to just inspire some response, because it's not that I'm right or wrong. It's just those are some of my thoughts, and I'd love to hear some other thoughts in and around that as well.
I think if you have it live, because it may be information this is Apple is a good example. It's live. Most of that, I think, was totally pre-recorded. Everybody showed at the time because it got the focus of the media attention, and people wanted to hear it when it happens, like a sports event. It's nothing good to have a sports event where it gets recorded unless you could do a block out. My wife would kill me at one of these little computer screens that would show scores, and we recorded a game, but she didn't want to know what the score was because she wanted to watch it from beginning to end. And then when she saw my computer screen show who had won, she was ready to kill me.
Oh yeah, that's tough.
I mean, I think that, like you said, there's no right or wrong answer. I think there is real value of having things, whether that's live or perceived live. I mean, the network television people have to deal with this. The morning shows and the late shows, actually in California, we never saw them live because they were recorded 3 hours earlier. But if it's a football game, you're seeing it when it happens. And I think those are your argument that it really needs to be live. But, you know, the live to video that the network feeds do, or even the newscasts where they'll even do an update, they'll have the West Coast feed, and which is later than the East Coast feed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think, you know, to your point, when it comes to, you know, the last episode of Ted Lasso, right? The finale of Ted Lasso, a live sports game, anything with a result. What's the, you know, Apple? I mean, to your point, Apple, what are they announcing, right? Coupled with, I mean, those are I think easily justifiable live events. Why? Because when live is finished, social media can ruin your day, to like your wife's point, right? She sees the score when she really wanted to, you know, kind of enjoy the experience, and that got taken away. And yeah, I think those with, you know, major announcements, conclusive scoring, who wins, who loses, you know, and then opinions in the Ted Lasso experience, public opinion of how good or bad or whatnot, you know, the finale episode was.
no spoilers,
And
I haven't gotten there yet.
yeah, no, I won't. The only thing I'd say is it was like the best episode of the entire series, you know. I mean, not just that season. It was amazing. So yeah, you definitely have to, you know, spend some time and watch it. But yeah, yeah, I mean, those are really good examples of of the reason for live and the reason to participate live, you know, if
But I think
there's,
that's when, you know, Muddy and I are part of the inside the stage, then Philippe and what he's doing. And clearly he's doing a performance. It's a live, you know, many of the people in his group are doing live magic shows or other highly produced live interactions. So, I mean, I think maybe the way to look at it is not, you know, for us as producers, but what is the expectation of our participants and what do they want? And, you know, I'll sign up for a number of events that are live, even though I know I'm not going to be there, because that's the way I'll get to play back. But there's certain ones that, because I want to engage in the chat, even though it's a webinar, and I have other friends who are going to be there and we'll engage in chat, both public chat and private chat, those I have to come at the time that they do them. There's a very good session that we had yesterday with an organization on AI in education. 700 attendees, 2 main speakers and a host, a very well planned and organized presentation, good use of, you know, canned materials so that, you know, people were on the same page and setting the tone, but a very heavily engaged Q&A going on. And both what was going on in the live event or the webinar that we were watching, but what was going on in the chat was equally as active. And you can listen to a keynote and go to the chat, and you could be, you know, part of the keynote where they were saying I wasn't as interested and I could follow up. And I think they did a very good job of figuring out how to engage their audience. And the reason I knew it worked very well is that they did the typical. They started at about 500 people. They didn't get till there's 700 people until about 5 minutes in, but they didn't lose anybody. You know, the numbers stayed packed to the end.
That's
and
great.
When I'm usually in an hour and a half conference, you could see the drop off very quickly if they haven't engaged their audience.
Yeah, I was gonna try to find it, but it's not so important that I quote it. But I saw a post yesterday on the Zoom community, and it was something similar to help me understand how I can use Zoom to create engaging and exciting events. And I'm just like, the way it was worded, it was like, it's not the tool's job for the engagement activities. I mean, maybe it has to have the mechanics and the logic to support what you come up with, but it's not going to inspire you to deliver the engageable activities. It is a really interesting question. I mean, it was so broad, so wide open, so kind of, I mean, categorically a bit misunderstood to a degree that I couldn't even reply. I was just like, man, I just don't even want to start. So anyways, but everybody's in a different position. I mean, I'm absolutely no exception. There's so much to be figured out. I mean, and when there's when there's strikes going on from some of the largest companies in the company in the world, that from employees that are striking because they're being driven via policy to get back in the office. There's some things to figure out. It's like, what's going to happen? I see stuff on Reddit sometimes that I'm changing jobs because I want to be fully remote, and so it's like, the drive and the aspiration.
Office is a challenge because obviously I'm failing retirement, but I don't have to go to an office.
Yeah.
But, our campus is primarily back to regular face-to-face instruction. There's still a amount of online and distributed learning taking place. But, every time I go to the DMV and have to wait 30 minutes in line, I want more people in the office.
That's true.
Or
That's true.
like all the stuff offline.
Do they have the Q or Qless system out there in California as well?
They do every attempt to try. You could set up a scheduled time. There's kiosks there. You could do pre-stuff. But at a certain point, they make you come in there, read the eye chart, and it's probably good that they do that. So it's, people probably,
yeah.
They make you show up to take your picture and put your thumbprint in. And I had opted to take at certain age levels, you have to take the driver's test again. So I took the driver's test online, so I wouldn't have to wait in line to get to the computer terminal and then take the test there and then wait for the terminal to spit out a sheet and then get back in the queue. And I thought, oh, this is great. I went and did my thumbprint. I went and got my picture, and I said, here's my sheet that shows that I've taken the test. It still put me in the queue of everybody else. So I was behind the people who were currently taking their test. So there was an advantage to having done. I could have gotten it through just as quickly by just deciding to take the exam.
Wow. Huh.
Best
Yeah, somebody didn't think that through. Should have been. It should have been. They should have given you that advantage. You assumed the advantage, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't deliver the advantage of keeping you out of the office until it's like, oh boy. But instead, they created a process that kept you in their building longer, occupying space longer than absolutely necessary. For sure, or like by probably quite a bit of time. So.
Well, my experience was the DMV, it's always going to take longer. So my expectation of how long it was going to take, it actually took less than that, but it took a lot longer than it should have been. The
Yeah. Always good conversations.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we're seeing you and you're not up in the helicopter taking pictures of a fire somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. I'm back on over the weekend, but yeah, it's fun. I mean, I love to fly. So, I mean, just getting off the ground is is always exhilarating, but being in a helicopter, which I've been a few times in my life, but you know, I'm a fixed wing pilot, and so I always have to get to the runway and down the runway. I mean, you know, one, we're on a dolly platform, so they just pull the dolly out and, you know, ramp us and take off and fly crazy over the grass and between the poles, and away we go. Like,
So
it's
is your camera
wild.
set up permanently mounted on the helicopter, or is it?
Yeah. So we have three. We have, you know, the big gimbal, big gimbal cam, on the kind of the, yeah, almost the bottom of the front nose, and then we have a tail cam as well. See if I can find it real quick, but then yeah, here, I'll pop this up. So that on the front nose is that's the gimbal cam. It's we lock it backwards in flight, and then when we get to the scene and slow down and
Keep the bugs
unlock. Yeah,
So
exactly.
they own the station owns the helicopter. Or they lease it?
No, actually, they pay for the services. So technically, I work for iHeartMedia, and a sister company of that, called Total Traffic. Total Traffic owns the helicopters, and like this a Robinson R44, and it's ordered as, I mean, R44s exist all over the world, but this R44 from Robinson comes as a news chopper. It has all the equipment, you know,
Gotcha.
installed and certified and the whole bit. So
Is there more than one of them in your market?
Well, there used to be, I think, 3 flying news stations, but Channel 9's the last. We're the only ones in the air these days, with live coverage and so forth. So they continue to value it. But on the very back tip of the tail, the horizontal tail back there, is a little black dot that is that's a camera, and so that shoots forward, kind of an in-flight view. And then there's a right inside the windshield, in the center of the windshield, to facing the right front seat, is for Johnny. Johnny's the image of Kansas City, eye in the sky, for years and years, and so he's the only one inside the helicopter who ever goes on the air live to that camera. But I've got a little switcher, you know, I've got the joystick controller. That guy, that's my laptop, they call it. That's parked. I sit on the north side of that picture. But if I play, I think that's a video.
It's like fun.
Yeah, it's, you
I
know.
need to go to my day job at this end, but you have a wonderful.
Yeah, it's a good time. You know, I mean, it doesn't pay tons. There's, you know, I get 35 hours a week, and I only have to fly. I only end up flying probably 4 to 6, maybe 7 of those 35. But I get paid for all of them. So it's all, that's probably the biggest win is being able to, you know, you just have to live inside of you have to stay within a radius, right? So I have to provide them a, you know, like 20-minute response time, you know. So outside of that, it's enjoyable. It's just one of the many things. And but always good to see you and converse, and have a great weekend.
You too. Take care.
All right. Frank, you haven't said much today.
Yes, sir. Just enjoying the show. I was out doing some errands, so I was listening on YouTube while I was driving around.
Ah, very good. You were that one listener that dropped. There were 5, and then it went to 4. It's probably yourself. So
I
didn't really go
turned you
away.
off when I ran into Home Depot. So
Yeah, very good. I've been turned off for less.
but as soon as I came out, I turned you back on.
There you go. Well, very good. What I don't even know what time it is. 2.5 hours in. So, anyways, any big plans for the weekend?
Shampooing carpets.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff.
I've got to get up early. I mean, I get up early every day, but I got to get up and get out tomorrow morning before it gets too doggone hot. And I've mown my front lawn twice, but not my back lawn. So it's like 2 or 3 behind in my backyard. So I got to go double cut that tomorrow before it gets too dang hot.
What do you call hot where you are?
It's been 91 to 95.
That's hot
and pretty humid. And but if I get like today's low, it says, I'm assuming this was this morning, was 64. So if I'd go start the mower at 7, but I think it'll piss some of my neighbors off. So I don't want to run it quite that early, but come 7:45, 8 o'clock, that thing's getting fired up.
hire a kid.
Yeah, I've been tempted to call one of the young men at church or something, but then it, you get what you get. So that's the biggest thing. I'm missing my boy. Got one of them still well, he's not in college right now. He's just stayed out there to work full time with a construction group, and then his twin brother, he's off in Taipei, Taiwan now, serving his mission. So,
wow.
And these guys used to do a great job with the yard. They spoiled me. But it's all mine now.
Good luck with that.
Oh yeah. Well, very good. Well, I'm gonna
have a great weekend.
Put a tail on this. Good seeing everybody. If anybody's listening there, Robert, Marty, who else is here? Robert. Yeah, that's about it. We're down to just a few here.
Can I ask you guys a quick non-Zoom question?
Yeah.
You may have experiences in this or not, especially Robert might know something about this. I'm looking for a company to we have pre-recorded videos. We want them to send us back ASL, not embedded in the original videos, just the person speaking. I have a system that allows me to play dual stream videos back to viewers. So I'm looking for a company. I'm having trouble finding one. I've got a meeting scheduled this week. Have you ever done that?
Yeah, we do that. We do quite a lot of that, actually. It's something that is similar to doing captions.
Right. I do captions all the time, but
yeah. And
can I contact you outside of this meeting sometime?
Please do. Please do. Do you have my email address? Or should I just put it in the chat for you?
If you want to put it in the chat, that'd be great. Or I could talk to you on the Discord, whatever you want.
Robert, are you on Discord? Somebody asked me the other day. I said, I don't know if he is. I don't think I'm connected to you on Discord, of all things.
I am on Discord, but I've got to admit that I switch it off for most of the day because it's a distraction.
My response was, you're a WhatsApp guy, right?
I'm a WhatsApp guy because I can put the mobile phone away while Discord is on my computer where I'm usually working. And if I have too many distractors, then I just lose focus completely.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I'd love to touch base with you next week if that's cool with you. There's no pressing urgency or anything. You could respond at your leisure.
Yep.
How many hours of footage do you or is it just an
I don't know exactly. It's probably going to be something like between 40 and 80 recordings. Something I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I'd just request you to do is when you send it across or we get in touch is just to give me the topic, because it's with interpretation, everything is so associated with the vertical that you're responding to.
Okay, sure.
So-
I'll put ASL captioning of pre-recorded videos or something.
Yeah, and the other thing is if you have any preference to the signer, because that's really important as well, depending on what you're going to do, what you're going to be signing. And I don't mean to be prejudiced in any way, but there's some men who will not be signed, who refuse to be signed by a woman, for example.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it works with interpretation as well. Some men find it strange that they're speaking as men and suddenly a woman's voice comes over and for the interpretation. So there are these little things. If anyone is sensitive to those peculiarities, then just...
Well, that's great. You just taught me something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to discuss it with you.
Sure. Yes, so I am on Discord, and I'll give you my email address in the chat.
Beautiful. Sorry for stealing some of your time there, Jeff. I know you're trying to wrap up.
No, it's a great topic too. I mean, Robert was on Office Hours a couple of days ago, right? Was it 2 days ago or 3 days ago? And it was all about. I thought it was Thursday. Yeah, it was Thursday.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch it yet.
But yeah, it's one of those things where I've been doing the ASL and Spanish and captioning during our church broadcasts, and I posed a question, and I'd love to even right now hear Robert's feedback. I mean, my question was, up to this point, I favor multiple streams. One, primarily, and I'll say that's changed recently because our church went to Zoom, and the floating resizable window is kind of the solve all be all to a great degree, right? Because it's like 100% user, consumer preference on where they want it, how big they want it, and so forth. But when it was a stream to a platform, I would do one for the primary program, no ASL, and then I would do one that was an ASL stream that was full screen with a smaller main program, picture in picture, because I've always felt like I'm potentially, offending the ASL audience by minimizing their signer. It's just like, it's different when it's captions, because captions are just a word, a strip of words, and they can commonly resize them and pick their fonts and so forth. But when it's a human, I just feel like, yeah, we'll put it up there, but we're going to shrink it down and get it out of our way. And so I just haven't really ever enjoyed that approach. So right now, this last stream I did was in fact a minimized signer who happens to be in-house during the event. So I can see the person in front of me, and he is signing to real people in front of him as well. So that's people who choose to attend the conference. They sit in front of the signers, but I also have a camera on him or her that then I put out, and we go out to a Zoom meeting. But I need to make the conversion now that we've switched over to Zoom and Zoom's added the feature. I need to now let that camera feed a computer that's joined into the Zoom as an ASL signer, so that the audience has that flexibility to consume it the way they want to consume it as well. So anyways, I've never felt really great about it. I have a really good friend who teaches, sign, and he's super proficient in the whole bit. And, I've asked him about that preference, from the audience, and, one, are there guidelines and legal guidelines and so forth? There are some guidelines, but but commonly it seems to be. Now, our church at the highest level, where all the money is, and the investment in tech equipment and broadcast equipment, they I don't know exactly how they do it, but I have a pretty decent idea. Is they have a signer who I will assume has an in-ear of the live audio, probably has a monitor watching the speaker as well for the expressions, but they're in their own room and in their own space, if you will, and I'm sure it's green screened, because it's a very real looking background, as if they're in a room. I mean, it's really, really high quality, but looks like they're in their own room, and it looks like it's a big, flat screen TV, but because it's green screened, that signer is almost full bodied, not quite, almost full height, if you will, but completely clipped out, right? With the chroma keying and so forth. So now they can kind of get by with really maximizing the size of the virtual TV set, because they'd make it look like a framed TV set on the wall, but the signer is in front and on the side of it signing. And so you have a really good sized image of the main program and a almost full height image of the signer. And but it's a dedicated broadcast to the signing community, right? And so everything about it is really easy to see and partake of. So I kind of fantasize about being able to do that, but the complexity in our building, just the logistics in our building of green screening and so forth, and the size of the audience is really difficult to justify the pretty immense effort of getting it all set up and plumbed as a deliverable. And no one's ever complained, but I don't know that I love running off of justifying what I'm doing is just right, just because nobody's complained either. So it's one of those things. But it's a great topic.
Let me see if I can address that, Jeff. Not to advertise too much, but on office hours tomorrow, I'll be talking about interpretation on Microsoft Teams, WebEx, and Zoom. And then after that, the next sessions will be specifically dedicated to sign language. So that's an interesting and a good source of knowledge. But to address the issue you raised, the challenge with sign language is that we sort of associate by default that people who are using the sign language are deaf. So they can't hear and they have to see. But our assumption is that they have no other disabilities. And when you speak to the requirements of that specific community and not go too general, they will often say, we like to see the captions as well, because we can see specific words from the captions and watch the signer. But there are other people in that community who say that the cognitive load of having to read, watch the speaker, and watch the signer is too much for a person to cope with over a longer period of time. And the other people who will say, I am both deaf and my vision is inhibited, so I need to have a big signer on the screen. I'm not really worried about the speaker. I want to be able to see the sign on the screen. So the requirements are varied. And I think Zoom has really, really hit the nail on the head with giving the person who is using that function the ability to decide what the size of the signer is. So that's one thing. The other thing that we sort of assume, which is a wrong assumption, is that it's only deaf people who are using the signer. What happens if you have a deaf person on stage, or a deaf person wants to ask a question? The signer actually has to interpret and speak what that deaf person is, the message that deaf person is giving. So the complexity of having a setup for a good signer is even more, because that person has to be able to talk. He has to be able to see on screen the person who's asking question. And things like Zoom, remember, Zoom will spotlight by default in the meeting the speaker. But a deaf person trying to say something isn't necessarily a speaker in terms of what Zoom conceives as a speaker.
Yeah.
So you have to either make a noise, switch his mic on, or be seen by someone, the host, who will then spotlight him for the signer. So there's a large amount of complexity around sign language. But the simplest mode is, of course, the mode that we know from the TV world, where the signer is next to the speaker, and that's it. And the sign is he's only signing for the deaf community.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. No, that's helpful. And I mean, I know, I mean, in my case with, this particular program, I have the program ahead of time by a few weeks, and so those things, those special combinations wouldn't have to be a surprise, if you will, right? And be unprepared, I guess. But yeah, those are combinations that that I hadn't thought about for sure. The I wanted to see if I had, just for your feedback, Robert. View mixed recordings. Here we go. Section 11. Do this. Okay. Let me I'll share this. Just I want unfettered, unfiltered, response, because I've done this two different ways. I've got two different formats, and love to know if there's you kind of have a preference as well. Oops. Wanted to do this as a share video advanced. Let me put a tail on this program real quick as well for the archives. Be right back.